Today on MuscleCar, it's a lime, it's a pickle. No, it's Project Limelight. We're turning back the clock on our Camaro to 1970 with a groovy green paint job. Tommy shows how to refurb a set of steel wheels and stainless trim. Plus, Rick lays down a set of Z28 stripes.
Hey, welcome to MuscleCar. Project Limelight is taking a huge step toward living up to her name. Today she's going to get a few coats of citrus green, which is not only a factory color for a 70 Camaro, but it's the original color of this car.
Now we've already taken care of the little bit of sheet metal and bodywork. Then we went 2 rounds with the priming and blocking, followed that up with the final wet sand of 400 grit. Now she's ready for paint.
We've masked this car really thoroughly to prevent overspray and even mask it to the floor to keep our freshly painted undercarriage looking good.
Now if we were doing a chalk mark restoration, then we'd actually want some overspray underneath, because from the factory, these things were not exactly perfect. They had visible overspray in areas like the sides of the cowl and pretty much the whole underside of things. But we're going for a cleaner look, so we got all that stuff covered up.
Well, y'all may have noticed that I'm on the injured list today. Working on cars is a pretty serious business with all the cutting and grinding and such. Well, you wouldn't think masking up a car is all that serious of a hazard. Well, I proved that wrong. Masking the roof off, I pulled a clip off and bashed my hand against this pinch weld. And I'm here to tell you, 9 stitches later, y'all pay attention to what you're doing in the shop, always.
Now before the color goes on, I'm going to lay down a coat of sealer. Now some guys think that this is kind of a wasted step, but it does serve several different purposes. It helps fill in any scratches left over from your final blocking. It creates a barrier between all of your bodywork and your top coat. It gives you a nice even color to lay your base coat down on, and it helps your base coat stick better. I'll use my Iwata base coat gun that I got from powertoolbox.net to spray the sealer. I'm not going to use a primer gun because primer guns have a lot larger orifice to move thicker material. Well, sealer is only slightly thicker than base coat, so I can go ahead and use the same gun. The fluid tip used for primer also requires a different air cap to break up the larger volume of liquid, so make sure to use the right gun for the material you're spraying. Check out the full Iwata line at powertoolbox.net. Sealer comes in many different shades, but grays are more easily covered by the base coat. Make sure to pick one the same tone as your base color. This green gray will be a good match for the citrus green going over it. I'm spraying the fenders at the same time as the body to help ensure a match. Any change in temperature or humidity can cause a color variance, especially in metallics, so it's a good idea to paint as much at one time as you can. This is why the doors and deck lid have already been mounted to the car. Of course, you still need room to move around without bumping into your wet panels, so don't pack in too much. The hood and nose pieces will be done in a separate batch. Now, picking a color for Project Limelight was easy because we really liked the factory color that was on it, citrus green. All we had to do was check the trim tag for the color code and give Auto Body Color and Supply a call. Now, trim tags can usually be found on the firewall, cowl, or radiator support, sometimes on the driver's side door jamb, so you might have to look around a little bit. If you're trying to match an existing paint job and don't know the code, take a panel with you to your paint supplier and they can mix up a custom match. Or if you don't know what you want, ask for a color chip book and browse until you find one you like. Always spray with the gun perpendicular to the surface and keep the overlap pattern very consistent, especially with metallics, or you could get stripes and splotchiness. 3 full coats go down first, then a light dust coat. That will ensure the metallic color looks even.
Coming up, Rick adds some more shine to Limelight, and later Tommy does some shining of his own.
Hey guys, welcome back. With all the base coat down on Project Limelight, we can go one of 2 ways. If you're adding graphics to a car like stripes, you can either put them under the clear, which means I'd have to spray them now, or you can go ahead and spray the clear now and add the graphics last. On Limelight, I'm going to be laying the stripes down over the top of the clear, and I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. First of all, when these cars were originally built, they didn't have any clear coat. They were all shot in single stage. Second reason is these are actually Z28 stripes. If you wanted them on an SS, well, the dealer had to add them later. If you're doing your graphics under the clear, then make sure the panels are correctly aligned, either on the car or on a rack, before laying the graphics out. Now, just like base coat, keep the pattern consistent with about 50% overlap. Pay attention to how it's acting as it hits the surface, and adjust your technique as you go. We painted the panels, ran everything through a bake cycle, and let it dry for a day, so we're ready for assembly. If your booth doesn't have a bake cycle, wait at least a couple of days before handling the parts. We'll tackle the front clip first. Now, the factory assembled it off the car and then dropped the whole thing on as a unit. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, they had a specialized jig to set all the parts on without running the risk of banging anything up.
We don't have one of those specialized jigs, so we're going to be doing this the old-fashioned way, piece by piece, starting with the core support. Everything is built off this piece, so leave it a little loose to allow for adjustment as the front clip goes together. The inner fenders need to go on either before or with the fenders. Don't try to jam them in after the fenders are mounted. Assembling a car is a lot like putting together a puzzle. Parts need to go on in a specific order. If you get it wrong, you're going to waste a whole lot of time having to redo it. A parts assembly manual cuts out all the guesswork. YearOne offers these for most muscle cars, and trust me, they're worth every red cent.
Now, assembly is also made easier with a master body kit. If you're doing a chalk mark type restoration, well, odds are you're going to be reusing some of your original hardware. But if the stuff is damaged, well, it's going to have to be replaced regardless. Now, this kit from YearOne comes with everything pre-bagged and tagged. That way, there's no searching around to try to find what you need. This is where working with an all-original car really saves a lot of frustration. These pieces are already familiar with each other, so we're just reuniting old friends with the help of some new hardware.
At this point, the front clip is just about finished, but the core support and inner fender bolts are still loose to allow final fitment of the hood. Once the hood and fenders are square and aligned, we'll tighten them all up. All good over here?
That doesn't look bad.
Trained professionals, okay? Trained.
Yeah, we got this.
Up next, turn your old steel wheels from that ain't right to out of sight. And later, Rick earns his stripes.
Hey, welcome back to MuscleCar. Now that we got the body painted and looking great, we can turn our attention to the wheels. Our car came with 14-inch rallies, and that doesn't exactly scream performance, so we're upgrading to the Z28 wheels. We'll gain an inch in diameter and an inch in width, so that means we'll get a lot more rubber to the road.
Build on a budget. MuscleCar projects that save you time and money.
You can buy repops, but we're going to show you how to refurbish an original set. Painted steel wheels with stainless trim are really common with muscle cars, so this process can be applied to more than just these Z28 wheels. Factory wheels are coated just like engine blocks. If you want to identify a set, check for the size and date stamp on the rim. Some are also coated near the valve stem hole. Z28s use this style wheel from 70 to 81. The earlier ones were painted gray and had an oval valve stem hole. The 77 ups were painted body color and had a round valve stem hole. These don't have the oval that we'd like to have, but painted gray, they'll be plenty good enough for our build. The first thing we need to do is straighten out the lip. A flat spot here and there is okay, but make sure the wheels aren't warped. If you have doubts, take them to a tire shop and have them checked. Next, smooth out any gouges or nicks. Use a metal file instead of a grinder to prevent scratches. Don't remove too much, just knock down the rough edges. Doing this step before blasting will leave a nice, even surface. You could try to chemically strip these, but believe me, it's worth a few extra bucks it will cost to have them blasted. I'm using glazing putty to fill in any nicks and scrapes. Once it's dry, sand it with coarse grit paper, like 80 or 120. Move to 180 or 220 grit to shape it, then smooth off the scratches with 320 or 400. I've got about 4 hours invested in these, and it's amazing how much better they look just getting the old paint off of them. DP primer is up next, which is the same stuff we used on the body. You can get good results out of a spray can, just be sure to use an edge primer for better adhesion. After blowing them off, wiping them down, and giving them a quick once-over with a tack cloth, I can get to spraying. I'm doing the backside first, then I'll flip them over and cover the rest. I'll give them 2 coats for a good barrier against rust. Early 70s Z28 wheels used a specific paint formula. That original lacquer is no longer available, so I gave our buddies a call out at Auto Body Color and Supply, and they hooked us up with a formula to match that original flat gray. The new formulation is a urethane base coat, just like we used on the car. After 2 coats of base, I'll let it dry for about 15 minutes, then lay on 2 coats of semi-gloss clear. Nothing ruins a good-looking set of wheels worse than some scuffed up, dented up trim rings and center caps. If you can't find replacements, or if your originals aren't messed up too bad, you might try fixing them up. This process works for all kinds of stainless trim, as long as you can get to the backside of the damaged area. Work slowly and gently, using a hammer with a tip that matches the size and shape of the area you're fixing. I'm using a metal file to find the low spots, not to remove any metal. Just skim it over the surface and you'll see what still needs work. You'll probably go through this process of hammering and filing several times to get the shape just right. Sand it with 180 grit, followed by some 320 to get rid of the scratches left by the file before it's polished. The next step is to buff out the tiny scratches left over from the sandpaper. This buffing kit from Summit Racing comes with all the compounds to shine up just about any type of metal on a car, from copper and chrome to steel and aluminum. You can even shine up plastic, and the buffing wheels that come in the kit will fit any shop grinder. Apply the compound to the wheel, not the trim, and make sure to wear gloves, because these things can grab the trim right out of your hand, which has been known to lead to trips to the ER. Let the wheel run over the entire surface. If you've done everything right, they should polish to a shine really quick. I'll get the emblems glued to the center and they'll be as good as new.
After the break, learn how to lay down some lines. You're watching MuscleCar. For a DVD copy of this episode, just go to PowerblockTV.com and order your copy for just $5.95 plus shipping and handling. Start your own MuscleCar collection, delivered right to your door from the Power Block.
Hey guys, welcome back. While Tommy finishes up the trim rings and center caps, I'm going to get the stripes laid out. Now there's a few different ways that you can do this. If you're going for a non-original look, then lay them out however you want. Just keep them symmetrical. But if you're going for a factory recreation of the originals, then there's a couple ways that you can do this. You can get a stripe kit, which is basically a big sticky template. Or you can use a picture of an original car and go with the measurement method, which is how I'll be doing it. The first step is to find the center of the hood by measuring both the back and the front. Use a soft tape measure to prevent scratches, and don't worry, the marks will come off with a little polishing compound. Mark the center line with 1/8" tape. Now this will be your main reference for laying out the stripes. The emblem is going back in place to use as a guide. Now when you're using pictures to help you lay out graphics, look for things like vents in the cowl, the distance to any emblems, and the distance in your body lines or curves. By looking at how the stripes run from the cowl vents in my picture, I know where they should start and how wide they need to be. I can also see how they're positioned around the emblem to get the correct length. Now looking at how the stripes follow the body lines on the hood will get me the rest of the way there. Now once I get the first stripe laid out, I'll take measurements to recreate it on the other side. This way, I know that they're going to be symmetrical. With the basic shape laid out, I can come back and mark the rounded corners using rolls of tape and sandpaper as templates. I'll run a line of 1/4" tape inside the original marks to create the outline of the outer stripe. This will be removed before I paint. Now next comes another strip of 1/4" tape inside the last one. This one marks the gap between the inner and outer stripes. Now I can remove the tape I laid to mark the outer stripe and mask it all up for paint. I sanded down all the big areas with 400 grit, then went back and hit all the edges with a red Scotch-Brite. Now if I was shooting these stripes like a high metallic silver, then I would have used something finer like a 600 grit and a gray Scotch-Brite. That way the sand scratches wouldn't come back through. But with the single stage black we're using on these, this prep will be just fine. Now we got it all scuffed up, masked up, now we're ready to lay down some black. When you're painting graphics on panels assembled to a car, make sure to mask inside all the gaps, where the black will travel under the masking paper and get all over the body and interior. After 2 coats, I got plenty of coverage. And here she is. After letting her sit for about 4 hours, I pulled all the masking off to reveal our new stripes. I'll tell you, I can really see why these things were a popular dealer option. I mean, they give the whole car a new attitude.
I got the trim rings and centers all finished up, then wrapped the wheels in a set of Firestone wide oval bias plies, just like it would have had when it was new. Coker Tire specializes in factory rubber, so they are the place to go if you want a stock looking tire. If you guys want more info on tires or anything else you've seen on today's show, or want to watch a full episode of MuscleCar online, check out PowerBlockTV.com.
Well, the exterior Project Limelight is looking awesome, and that means that we can turn our attention to the interior. But for this week, we're out of time. So until next time, we're out of here.